please hit that subscribe button. Hey everybody, better suited to win the Stanley Cup this season. If you are new to the channel, the Washington Capitals, the Boston Bruins.
Locked on and he scored! And we're live. Hey everybody, so the NHL trade deadline is quickly approaching, coming up on Monday. This is a very busy time of year in the NHL. Obviously, there's been a good, solid number of trades that have already happened. A bunch more are going to happen this weekend. And then Monday itself is going to have its own batch of massive trades. So before we get to the weekend, I want to give kind of a preview of the trade deadline. In this video, looking at the Eastern Conference and some of the contending teams in the East and see what they might do at the deadline. And then in the next video, I am going to do the Western Conference and look at out West. Before I start, I just quickly want to remind everyone that if you are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. I'm going to have a ton of hockey content coming your way the rest of this season, the playoffs, off season. Really would love to have you become a part of the community here. And everyone to please hit that like button and give this video a thumbs up. Those likes really do help out a lot and are very much appreciated. So let's get into it here. Trade deadline preview for the Eastern Conference this season. Couple more days for these teams to make a few more days really for these teams to make some serious moves. So let's start with Boston. Boston just made their massive move for Ondrej Kase of the Anaheim Ducks, dumping the Backes contract. That, I think, is their move for a right wing. However, there's still talks that Boston is not done. Now, I do think that they're out of the Chris Kreider sweepstakes because they gave up their first-round pick in the Kase deal, so they don't have their first-round pick anymore. So that pretty much gets them out of the Chris Kreider sweepstakes. However, they still could make another move. They could make another depth move. I mean, Boston's the best team in the league this year, points-wise. They're leading the league right now. I don't know. There's not a whole lot for them to do to improve. They brought in Kase as a depth forward, so that really helps out offensively there. But you know, could they add another forward? I really don't really see them adding to their defense. I think defensively they're fine. There's been a little bit of talk about them possibly bringing in like a bottom pair depth defenseman type guy. I don't think they really need that, honestly. If they do anything else, I think it's going to be a forward, another forward that they bring in. But honestly, in the shape that Boston's in right now, I really don't think that they need to do anything, but maybe if the right deal is out there. Tampa Bay, right behind Boston, obviously one of the best teams in the East again. Tampa I think is pretty well set. I look at that lineup and I don't really see any drastic need. Maybe a depth forward, maybe like a fourth line type guy, but even that I really don't think they need it. You know, defensively I think they're okay. They've got a really good top four there. Obviously, they're all set in goal. Tampa, after getting Blake Coleman, I would honestly be surprised if Tampa does anything else. I really think that their lineup is set and that they are ready for a playoff run. And if they do make a move, I think it's going to be definitely a depth move on the part of Tampa Bay. Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh's leading the Metro Division right now, despite all the injuries, having a massive, massive year. They've already added Jason Zucker a couple weeks back. That was a huge deal for them, especially with all the forwards they've had out injured. Adding Zucker gives them a big-time scoring option to play with Sidney Crosby. Which is, you know, already he's putting up points and scoring goals, and that's going to be a fantastic connection going into the playoffs. I think that was Pittsburgh's big move. I don't see them making another, you know, high-end blockbuster type move like that. However, Pittsburgh is a team that's never been afraid to wheel and deal, and I do think that we could see them make a depth move or two here heading up towards the deadline. You know, Pittsburgh's a team that's always looking to improve, and when you look at their bottom six forward group, there's a lot of guys, a lot of young guys there, a lot of guys who've spent a majority of their careers in the AHL to this point. I think maybe they could add one more veteran depth forward to help shore up that team there. Maybe even a depth defenseman as well. But if Pittsburgh does make another move, I think it's largely going to be depth related. It's not going to be a big move. They've already made their big move with Jason Zucker. Washington. So the Washington Capitals added Brendan Dillon to that defense core from San Jose. I don't see them doing much more than that. Washington's a team that they're 80 points right now, second place in the Metro. Very, very good team, built for the playoffs. Very physical team. They don't need to add any toughness or anything like that. Honestly, I'd be quite surprised if Washington really does anything else. I think Washington did what they needed to do. They added to that defense. They got a good defenseman, which takes, maybe we see a little less of Siegenthaler. We see a little less of Nick Jensen, and they shored up that defense core a little bit. And now I just think it's playoff time for the Washington Capitals. They haven't been playing as great as of late. I think it's really playoff time now for the Washington Capitals. I don't see them really changing much from here. Toronto. What an interesting situation the Maple Leafs are in. So they're fighting for their playoff lives. They're at 72 points. They're well back of Boston and Tampa Bay. They're going to finish third in the Atlantic at best this season. It's clear. They've made some minor moves. They've brought in Dennis Mulligan. They've made some AHL level type moves. They obviously made the trade a couple weeks ago for Jack Campbell and Kyle Clifford. The big issue, and it's been the big issue for years now, is that defense. Toronto's defense is the problem. And quite honestly, I think Toronto's in a situation where they need to make a move. They have to do something with that defense core, or they might not even make the playoffs this year. If they don't do anything with that defense, even if they do make the playoffs, they're one and done again, guaranteed. They're out first round if they bring that defense core that they have now into the playoffs. It's not going to work. You'd think they would have learned their lesson over the past 3 years, but apparently they haven't. They need to add to this defense core. They need a defensive defenseman who can play shutdown minutes in their own end. They don't have that right now. They've got guys injured, particularly Morgan Riley. That's a huge loss for them. Cody Ceci, not really a loss for them. Toronto has to do something with this defense. And if they don't, they're in big trouble. And I look for them to make some sort of move for a top four defenseman of some kind who can actually play defense in their own zone. Philadelphia, I think, is going to be an interesting team because Philadelphia had that disaster of a season last year. Back in a playoff spot this year, looking like a pretty good team. Kevin Hayes, that signing has worked out really well for them. Hayes has played really well as the number 2 center. Philly, I don't think is in a position where they're looking to drastically change anything. Shane Gostisbehere is obviously looming over them. I think they've been trying to get rid of him for a while now, but there's really hasn't been the deal out there. Gostisbehere is a guy to watch. Maybe they potentially get a deal done to move him. Again, I don't see big moves coming in the way of Philadelphia. I think, if anything, they add some depth, and they add some depth players, maybe some veteran guys to this group. But for the most part, I don't think Philadelphia is going to do any, big splash type moves. New York Islanders. So the New York Islanders have fallen out of playoff spot as of me recording this. It's only by a point, or not even. They're tied with Carolina, but Carolina isn't on the tiebreaker. The Islanders are a team that desperately needs scoring. They've not been scoring goals in the last few weeks. It's been a huge problem. They've not really been playing that well in the last couple weeks. They added Andy Green, which I thought was really a surprising and shocking move. I didn't really see their issue being defense at all, but they bring in now a 37-year-old defenseman that they gave up a second-round pick and a prospect for. Defense, though, they're still one of the top defensive teams in the league. This team's biggest issue is scoring goals, and they haven't had anybody scoring goals over the past couple weeks. So I look for the Islanders to be in on any goal scoring help that they can get at the deadline this year. Whether it's Chris Kreider, although I'm not really sure the Rangers want to send Kreider to their in division rival and team that they share a state with. Don't want to call them cross city rivals because New York, the Islanders are more on Long Island, whereas the Rangers are the New York City team. But they're in the same division. They're in the same state. I don't know if the Rangers want to send Kreider to the Islanders. I think the Islanders should certainly be in on JG Pageau. I think that's a guy that they honestly might be the number one team that needs JG Pageau as far as, him coming in and playing a third-line center role and really helping them out offensively, killing penalties and other, doing other things as well. I think that could be a huge addition. A little bit lower cost possibility for the Islanders, I think, could be Andreas Athanasiou from the Detroit Red Wings. Now, can Athanasiou play well enough defensively in Barry Trotz's system to get ice time in New York? That, I think, would be a huge question mark. But he certainly would add some speed and potential scoring ability to that team, as far as a depth role probably and as a third liner goes. I think that could be an interesting option. But the Islanders have to do something about goal scoring, or they're going to be in trouble come playoff time if they even make the playoffs. Carolina, interesting situation this year, right on that playoff bubble. Carolina is a team I really don't think does much. You look at that roster on paper and it's good. I don't know what they don't really need anything desperately. They have a really good defense core. I think what Carolina does, and if they make the playoffs or how far they go in the playoffs, is largely going to come down to how their goaltending is, and can Peter Mrazek play as well as he did last season. And if he can, then I think Carolina gets into the playoffs and might be able to make some noise like they did last year. And if he doesn't, then Carolina might be that first or second team out in the Eastern Conference that just misses. But I don't really see them making any huge moves. I think they've got their D-core pretty well in place. I think they've got a pretty solid forward group. It's just about them going out there and getting the job done. And the last team I want to talk about from the East is the Columbus Blue Jackets, another team, not really sure that they're going to do a whole lot, but they're another team that could certainly use some scoring. I don't know if they spent so much last year in getting Matt Duchene and getting Ryan Dzingel and bringing these guys in for a playoff run last season that they really don't have a ton for assets to trade away. And I don't really know how active they're going to be at the deadline this year after last season. I hope it's not as much for their sake. Because again, even if Columbus gets in, I don't see them, going beyond the second round or anything like that. So is it really worth selling the future to get knocked out in the second round of the playoffs again? Probably not. So Columbus, I don't really think is going to make any huge moves, but I do think that if they do something, they could be looking for some secondary scoring, because that has been an issue for them this year. They are a more defensive-minded team. And they are a team that could use some help in the goal scoring department. But overall, those are my preview for the East this year. Again, Boston's already made moves. We'll see if they make more. Tampa's made their big move. I don't know if they're going to make any more. Toronto desperately needs defensive help. Pittsburgh has made their big move with Jason Zucker. They might do some depth adding, though, on top of that. Washington, I don't really see any huge moves coming from. Maybe some depth. Philadelphia, again, I don't think they make a huge splash move. I think Philly's more looking for depth as well, which there's going to be a lot of teams at the deadline this year looking for depth forwards and depth defensemen to just get ready, geared up for a playoff run. The Islanders, I think, desperately need some scoring. Columbus could use a little bit of scoring as well, and Carolina, I don't think, makes a big move necessarily. I think they have a pretty good group in place, but they might make one noteworthy trade to try and add to that group. But there's my preview of the Eastern Conference, guys. Thank you for watching. I will do the Western Conference right after this. That's pretty much it. We'll see what happens between now and Monday when everything really comes to a head and it's deadline day, and you either make a move or you don't, and we'll see what these teams actually decide to do. So with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.